You've talked about engaging the public. Can you talk to me a little bit more about how you engage the public?
I talked about democratic accountability a while back. Here's a quick anecdote. Ken Livingstone went to see Baroness Sue Hollick, who was chair of London Arts. At that first meeting, she was the main arts funder for London. We were the government of London. He, I believe, said to her, "You've got the money. I have the democratic accountability. We must work together." I think Ken told me this story, and I certainly know that officers repeated the story to me. It weighed quite heavily in terms of my accountability and the policy's accountability to ordinary Londoners. So we set up what we call the consultation phase, which was iterative and lasted the life of the cultural planning process. What this meant was we needed to ask Londoners, including arts, media, culture, sport, heritage people, we wanted to ask Londoners what they thought was important to them in terms of culture, media, arts, heritage and tourism. I'm going to shorthand that as culture. What was important to them for culture, what they enjoyed, what didn't work, what they'd like to see more of, and would they like to participate in making decisions about that. So part of my itinerary and the itinerary of the strategy was actually to meet people, not just the institutional bosses, but to get out to different parts of London, to see culture wherever it was happening, informally and formally. This ranged from going through Lewisham, around Deptford, New Cross, to the Albany, to see companies like Antaliki Arts, which became exemplary of the whole process, to going to an institution like the V&A here and asking questions about who is it for. You folks are beneficiaries of the V&A. Do you like what you see here? What works for you? What doesn't work? And trying to go behind their answers and trying to investigate almost as anthropologists. Investigate what the map of culture was. What was the bloodstream? What were the births going on? What were the deaths happening? So it was actually mapping this topography, cultural topography of London. So I physically spent every month visiting and meeting probably 5 times a week. I'd go to different locations and meet a number of people, not just the formal institutions, and not just those people in the street. And then we set up things which included our website, which posted up our meetings, invited people to come into them. We began to post out documents by mail and by email to a range of people who expressed an interest. It was difficult to impose a hierarchy around how many people do we go out to, how do we assign priority to the inputs coming back in. Essentially what we thought was, look, let's set up a process where people know we want to listen. Let's set up a conversation so there's dialogue. Let's just see what stands out for us as individuals. It's difficult to apply a filter. This isn't a maths exercise, it's not an exercise about engineering, it's about social culture. So a lot of our work was spent informally and formally gathering, I suppose you could say, the results of polling, the results of interviews. These were research exercises and very live, active collaborations beyond exercise. So what happened as a result of that was that we ended up with an enormous amount of paper and I believe some audio, which had some quite extraordinary input from very unexpected sources, as you'd expect. You know, we're looking at a core group of 8 million people who we're trying to hear from, and not make this a politically correct exercise of being fully representative, but being one which was true to the nature of London being a vibrant mongrel city, which didn't really need us in government to tell it what was happening and what was good. I think rather we needed to know what was happening and what was good, because in a sense we needed to be in touch. And I think on behalf of Londoners, we need to be as in touch as Londoners were. And I think part of the process of listening into the public was to ensure that our feet were on the ground at all times. Bear in mind, the strategy group we're appointed to have their feet on the ground, and they cast people who basically had a track record of not only doing that, but we're going to continue to do that regardless of being on the strategy board. Coming to the V&A is an interesting one because I did listen in here, and I'll just give you two examples of some of the articles which come out. I came here, I won't mention when and with whom, but I remember sitting in the cafe, this was in 2000, and I asked a question. I said, looking around, I said, look who are here, who are not here, and are you interested in knowing the answers to the questions? Who are here and why are they here? Because I think it was pretty apparent to me who wasn't there. It was pretty bluntly apparent. You can probably guess, but it's no point in me telling what my filters were. What was extraordinary is I felt that at a very senior level in this institution, at that time, people weren't really interested in asking those questions, hearing the answers, and understanding what to do with the answers. And I felt a sense of insecurity and uncertainty about what such a questioning would lead to. Another example, I mentioned the Albany in Deptford. Antaliki Arts has worked in Lewisham as an arts company, one of the world's kind of leading edge arts companies, which happens to be very socially engaged. When I say that, I mean it happens to be. I mean to say it's not an education, social welfare, human rights setup, but because they work in such a joined up way that their practice is utterly accountable to the society the art springs from and goes to. And so the questions I was able to ask them had to be formulated in a different way because some of the artists didn't speak a language. They couldn't hear words. They might be able to feel your touch. And this, I think, may sound radical on camera, but just to know that I myself for 20 years have experienced their work. And it really influenced my own approach to understanding the role of culture in establishing excellence in not only aesthetic outcomes, but in terms of its overall methodology, its legitimacy coming from accountable practice. So this just gives you a stretch from Deptford, New Cross, a very quiet process which had not really been much heard of until I had stated it, and then coming to a building like this, which seemed to put across that it already knew what was going on, it's doing it well, and that's how it should continue. And we needed to ask those questions on what needs to continue, what needs to happen afresh.